Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. So this is the video that I've been working on for actually over 2 months. And I'm going to try to speak fast because I don't want this video, hopefully I can keep it under 1 hour. So where I left off basically was speaking about a particular verse that Darth Dawkins uses in his Clubhouse profile. Here it is, 2 Corinthians 10:5. We are destroying arguments and all arrogance raised against the knowledge of God, and we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. So he sometimes talks about worldviews as if it is a war against worldviews. You know, where he is saying that there is this war between his worldview and other worldviews. I'm going to show you, let you listen to a clip.
That's why I use nuclear strength rationale apologetics to shake people up.
So this is a nuclear strength line of reasoning, and it cannot be defeated. This is what.
So what we need to go to now is to go to the nuclear strength of biblical tactics. Okay.
They're only accustomed to thinking in terms of cliches and slogans. And so when you bring this tour de force, powerful nuclear strength reasoning from biblical presuppositional apologetics, they just ignore it. And
yeah, well, that's like the Japanese fighting back after we dropped the A-bomb.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Biblical presuppositionalism, because it is biblical and it is comprehensive, it is like dropping the A-bomb. You know what the first...
Well, that's the predicament that atheism is in. Since they reject God's self-disclosure of himself in natural and special revelation, I'm going to drop a bomb on them. Now, the name of the...
This is like the United States dropping the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Okay?
Mm-hmm. I'm ready for it.
You know, atheists know with this line of biblical presuppositional reasoning, it's like an atomic bomb that's dropped on Hiroshima. There's no coming back from it. So what do? Intelligibility. It's game over, lights out. I just bring up the analogy of the invasion of mainland China and the atomic bomb as an analogy to the hardened hearts of unbelievers. You can present.
So in my last video, I brought up the Japanese soldier, the one that hid in the jungle during the war. His name was Hiroo Onoda. Hopefully I'm saying that right. But what happened is that he somehow got separated from his group, and he ended up hiding in the jungle. This was during the war, and he stayed there for quite a long time. In fact, he stayed in the jungle 29 years. He thought that all that time that the war was actually going on, but it had already ended. I think he came out of the jungle, and I believe it was either 1974 or 1979, I forget. But it was well after the war had already ended. And when the people saw him coming out, they said, you know, what's up? What are you doing? And he said, well, I was hiding. I don't want the enemy to capture me, or, you know, something like that. And then that's when they explained to him the war was already over. So to me, that is Darth Dawkins. Now, here's the way I look at this, and I think I look at this a little differently than most other people do. But see, I want that. To me, that's the best position I can be in. This guy thinks he's got a nuclear strength worldview. He thinks he's got some kind of a all-inclusive ironclad package that cannot be defeated. All right? And so when I hear that, I don't want to touch that. I want that to stay just the way it is. If that's what he thinks, if that's his psychological processing, beautiful. That's fine. But see, here's the way I look at it. He's the guy in the jungle who thinks the war's still going on. The war's already ended. Now I'm going to explain why the war ended. because, see, when he came out of the jungle, I was standing there, and one of the first things he did, he gave me his weapon. He turned it over to me. And that's what he did philosophically. He gave up his weapon. Now, I want to say that this video is talking about one person's specific worldview, that of Darth Dawkins. It's not meant to be speaking about Christianity or even presuppositional apologetics. It's aimed at one person's specific worldview. He has already given up his weapon a long time ago. He doesn't know it yet. So every time I hear him where he talks about, I've got a nuclear strength worldview, well, I'm the guy that's on the beach. Okay, I'm sitting there on the beach. I'm just laying back. I've got my radio on. I'm listening to my music. I've got my drink, my pina colada or Coke or whatever I have. I've got that on one side. On the other side, I got a bucket of ice. I'm having a party. So when I hear him say that, I'm like this. I don't want to touch that. That's fine. So anyway, so I think I made my point that this is how he perceives his worldview, that he thinks he's got this so-called all-inclusive, ironclad philosophical package. So let me explain what I'm going to do in this video. There's basically going to be 3 parts to this video. In fact, this will be the very first video that I've ever did. I will have the chapters. You'll see that once I post it. It'll be broken down into chapters. But the first part of the video, which is right now, I'm going to speak about how he has actually edited and changed his worldview. He has modified his worldview many times. So I'm going to show what he has did in the years that he's been in social media, how he has changed this so-called nuclear strength worldview. And to me, I would think that if it was nuclear strength, why would anyone need to change it? But anyway, the second part of the video is going to be talking about self-evident truths, because that was my original motivation when I did this video. It was in reply or like a response to a conversation that I had heard. So that was the main motivation, but then I decided to add, instead of 2 parts, I decided to add 3 parts to this video. The third part is going to be it's going to bring him to the foundation, to his own foundation, because I thought about it, talking about self-evident truths, that's fine, but it's not going to hit the foundation. We even have to go more fundamental than that. So I'm going to bring him to his foundation and show how, basically, once you look at it, he does not have an ultimate starting point or an ultimate ending point. Either way, his God is an incoherent God, and that's according to his own criteria. It's according to his own claims. It's according to what he says about his own worldview. See, the great thing about this is I don't have to do any work. I don't. All I'm doing, oh yeah, the guy on the beach, by the way, he's a reporter. So all he's doing is just reporting what this other guy in the jungle said. That's all. He's just showing other people what this guy said. Now, what my worldview is, me? Moi? I don't have to say anything about my worldview if I don't want to. That's completely beside the point. When you watch the news, well, let me put it this way. As I grew up, typically when you watch the news, you would not hardly ever see the reporter say anything about what he thought, pro or con, good or bad, whatever. They wouldn't make any remarks about what they were reporting. All they were doing was just telling what was going on, basically, which may or may not have been the case. But the point I'm trying to make here is my worldview in this case is totally irrelevant. I don't have to defend anything. I'm in my channel right now. I'm not in Supreme Leader Streams. I'm not in the Atheist Helpline. I'm in my channel. So I am the Supreme Leader. I don't have to justify anything. I don't even have to do this video. I have no obligation to do this video or even to be on YouTube. So I don't have an obligation or a justification for anything. So now I want to jump into this. I want to show you some of the things that Darth has said about his own worldview. And this is scanning a timeline, which according to him, he says that he's been on social media 13 years. So some of this I know is going back at least 7 years, but some of it may be longer than that, but one of the things I want to start with is this is a part of a debate that he had with FloydFP, which I know he's had at least three or four chats with Floyd. But there was one part of the debate that I want to bring out. And by the way, this was where Floyd was quoting Greg Bahnsen, where Bahnsen was speaking about presuppositions. And here that is.
Perspective or a starting point in terms of which everything else is interpreted and evaluated. As such, presuppositions have the greatest authority in one's thinking, being treated as one least negotiable beliefs and being granted the highest immunity to revision. Okay, this is Greg Bahnsen describing what a presupposition is. Okay.
So what I noticed about that particular part of the video, which by the way, the name of it is Darwin's Deity versus Floyd, Round 2. It's on FloydFP's channel. Excuse me. And what I noticed is that while Floyd was reading that, Darth actually was not there. He was, I think what happened was the moderator actually temporarily kicked Darth out of the room because he later said that he wants other people to get in or that he wanted to say something. So that's the reason why he temporarily kicked Darth out. And then I think later Darth raised quite a fuss about that. In fact, he raised a fuss about that more than once in the video, complaining about the moderator. But anyway, excuse me, if you notice that where Floyd said that a presupposition has the greatest authority in one's thinking, and it's something that is granted the highest immunity. It's the least negotiable. It has to be treated as one's least negotiable beliefs. Okay? Now, now remember, that's referring to a presupposition. And after Floyd, you watch this video, I highly recommend it. It's over 1 hour, slightly over 1 hour long, but basically the whole video is an argument about what you could call presuppositions or related to different things, axioms. From Darth's point of view, it would be the so-called foundational, precept foundation or grounding. He likes to use the word grounding. Okay, so it's just a back and forth between both Floyd and Darth. They were debating about this so-called presupposition at this point in time. Now, this is, let me check the date on this. I'm going to check real quick. I know this is from 2018. Now, let's go back a couple of years earlier and let's listen as Darth speaks about presuppositions. Let's see if there's any change or any deviation. Let's see if he speaks as though he is discrediting presuppositions or has something negative to say about a presupposition. Let's take a look at this nuclear strength worldview, or part of it. Here's that clip.
I mean, don't you need to presuppose knowledge prior to presupposing God? Otherwise, what are you talking about?
We all have starting presuppositions or properly basic beliefs. Okay?
So if I start with a presupposition of knowledge, why do I need God to?
Oh, really? And notice, excuse me, notice that Darth said we all. So basically what that was, sorry, I'm losing my voice here, but basically what that was, that would be what Darth would refer to as a universal statement. Because whenever somebody says we all do this, or we all do that, or we all do not do this, that's a universal statement. So what that means, he said, this is applying to everybody when he said we all have presuppositions or properly basic beliefs. So that would be people who are in, and I'm not granting this because Darth says that there are, well, depending on which version of Darth, he says in one version that there are at least two worldviews. One of it is the God world, the other is the not God world. I'm not even granting that, but this would apply to those who are in both worldviews because it's talking, according to Darth, it's talking about everybody. Thank you, Darth. I appreciate that. So that was a little weapon that he just gave me. But that's not the biggie. That's not the jewel. I'm going to get to that at the end. But that's just one little thing. So here he's talking about presuppositions. He also mentioned properly basic beliefs, which I'm going to get to that in a second. So when you listen to that clip, when Darth is referring to presuppositions, and remember, he's referring to it from his worldview. And he's saying that everyone has that. Now, I think that's a little different from what you're going to hear nowadays. I'm going to give you an example of what you might hear nowadays if you mention that word with Darth.
Sure. About Greg Bahnsen and presuppositions. Now, within the Christian worldview, the means by which we determine that anything is the case is the infallible revelation of the Christian God. That is what actually demonstrates the case. Now, you can call that a presupposition or not. It doesn't matter to me that that's the case.
Oh, well, you didn't tell me that. So if you're going to conflate
Okay,
terms,
what is it? Do you have an ultimate? Do you have when I say foundational, I mean ultimate. Do you have an ultimate or foundational grounding for anything you affirm or deny in your atheistic worldview?
My presuppositions.
Okay, your presuppositions are not ontology. What is your ontology?
All right, now you just heard that, and now you're hearing a little bit of a different attitude. Now, what's interesting about that clip, Darth himself used the word ultimate. He used the word, and he says that word is synonymous with foundational. And that came from one of his chats with Jim Major. So he was asking Jim Major, what is your ultimate or what is your foundation? And then after Jim replied, Darth seemed to reject that answer. Now, what's bewildering about that is the next clip.
Or more basic beliefs of these acts of revelation?
Well, your presupposition could be considered what your fundamental starting point is, or your ultimate commitment.
Right, but your
and
starting
in my
point.
case,
Oh, oh, okay. Now I'm getting it. Okay. I guess I didn't get it the first time. I guess that's not what you meant the first time. Or maybe that's not what you meant the second time. Who knows? Take your pick. And before I show the next clips, I want to relate to a book that I read. Gosh, it was maybe when I was about 20, 21. And the name of the book was The Kingdom of the Cults by Walter Martin. who at that time was considered the world's foremost authority on cults. And he explained when speaking with these cult members to be very careful about the words that you use and their definitions. And I would definitely say that when you're speaking with Darth Dawkins, I would equate it to a person who is in Disneyland. They're also in Harry Potter. They're in Alice in Wonderland, where the meaning of words always was, but never were. And by the way, that person is also in a coma. Okay, now the next word I'm going to discuss is properly basic beliefs. And this is a goodie. It's kind of comical. Now, I already played a clip earlier where Darth said that we all start from presuppositions and properly basic beliefs. So I'm not going to replay that, but I'm going to play another clip where he mentions properly basic beliefs. Here that is.
Okay. We first of all, we have properly basic beliefs, and then we have presuppositions that are added to properly basic beliefs. Properly basic beliefs are not something that we can further go back and defend.
Correct.
That can't.
Okay, so it sounded like Darth was almost accepting the idea again, philosophically and intellectually acceptable to speak about a properly basic belief. And he said, we all start with properly basic beliefs. Now, that, again, is one version of Darth, and this is going back earlier. All right? So from listening to that, it would seem like Darth is saying that that would be the threshold, or the, I guess you could call it maybe an epistemological limit, that you can't go back any further than that. This was the same thing that Floyd said against Darth. In his chat with Darth, he was telling Darth, you can't go back any further. So let's take another look at what he might say nowadays if you mention properly basic beliefs.
This is typical of what the skeptics do. When you ask them a very clear question, they will pretend like they're answering, but the response that they give does not specifically address the question. And this is what Floyd did. He was lecturing us about presuppositions. I asked Floyd, by what means can you demonstrate that anything you say is the case? And then he wants to ramble about properly basic beliefs, and then he goes into a lecture about 𝐀𝐥𝐥-𝐿 and presuppositions. Now, within
It would just be complete subjectivism. Right?
And it's all abstract thinking, right?
Yeah. So, see, people can hide behind terms like axioms and properly basic beliefs, right? But ultimately, this is with the rejection of God and his self-disclosure of himself, who he is, and his attributes, and his plan of creation, making facts are what they are in the plan of God.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the magical world of Darth Dawkins. Okay, this is magic. It has to be magic. You just heard what happened there. The very same point that Darth formerly held, and that he said this is something we all do, is the very same point that he critiqued Floyd for holding. So the position that Darth used to hold and say, speaking from what he calls the Christian worldview, is the very same point that later he says it's a denial of the Christian worldview. And remember, and I've played this clip many times. I will play it at the end of this video, because I always include that at the end. Or not always, but often. I've did that recently within the last probably 6 months, where Darth said he only speaks from the Christian worldview. He's not going to speak from any other worldview, according to what he said. Well, go figure. Again, take your pick. It's magic. With the wave of a hand, he can say one thing in this. And remember, I'm reminding you, this is what he calls a nuclear strength worldview. Now, there are other things which I've already did either at least one video or multiple videos about. But one of the things that Darth admits to, he admits to modifying or changing his view, actually changing about neutrality. And this is very important because Darth has said that the concept of neutrality, it encompasses the idea that one can be neutral or agnosticism, which of course now, no, you won't hear him saying that. But going back, Darth, by his own admission, he admits that he used to think that people could hold that position. As a matter of fact, he has went on record, this is going back years ago, but I have the clip. I'm glad I have the clip. I recorded it. He was speaking with an agnostic, and he actually told the agnostic that the best word to use to make a distinction between being an agnostic versus an atheist was to use the word agnostic. So Darth has already went on record telling at least one individual that that would be the best thing to do. That's the best position to take, is to call yourself an agnostic.
There are three basic positions on the existence of God. One can affirm the existence of God, one can deny, and one can remain neutral, such as an agnostic, where you don't know whether or not God does or does not exist. So if it's your position that you neither affirm nor deny the existence of God, then the best word that you should use in order not to be confusion in common parlance is to call yourself an agnostic.
So on this issue about agnosticism, Darth has been all over the place. I mean, name it. Darth has went on record as saying that there are no agnostics. Darth has went on record as saying that an agnostic is the same thing as an atheist. Darth has, as you just heard, suggested that you call yourself an agnostic versus an atheist, and that there is a distinction. Now, here is the little clip where he said that he admitted modifying or changing his view about being neutral.
Now, I didn't even realize until a few years ago that the idea of neutrality toward God was not neutrality, because of my being brought up in Western civilization. I thought it was perfectly intellectually, philosophically, and theologically appropriate to, you can affirm God, you can deny God, and you can be neutral toward God. Now, as a generalization, that's fine, but in actuality, neutrality toward God does not exist. It's an indirect, implicit denial of God, hiding behind openness that you might accept God existing. So when we take a biblical view on these things, it exposes the fraudulent thinking of the unbelieving world, and we Christians have been too influenced. We keep on acquiescing to their demands. Okay, why should we as Christians, who acknowledge God's existence, we acknowledge God has revealed Himself, that God is the ground of all being, why should we humor unbelievers that there are parameters of existence that provide for all sorts of facts that exist without God? Why would we tolerate that? Look, we're not neutral, and neither are they. Daniel, let me explain it to you this way. If we try to reason toward God, and we don't start metaphysically that God is a necessary precondition, and we know this because he's revealed himself, and you have premise 1, premise 2, and then the conclusion, therefore God, that's incoherent. Because how can you establish either premise in an argument by which you conclude in God? What would be more absolute than God himself in the either premise? How could you establish any premise without God's existence? Now that's a serious question.
So now let me play maybe what could be called a little updated clip, because now he says that to claim neutrality, it would actually be impossible. So the very same thing that he suggested that an agnostic do earlier is the very same point that he is now later saying would be impossible to do. Here's that clip.
I think you're misunderstanding your position, right? You're not in a position of neutrality. Nobody is. That is impossible.
Now, another change that he has made, and really I'm granting that it's a change, but actually I don't think it is. This would be more of a contradiction, but I'm just going to put it in the category of something that he has modified, is when he speaks about his worldview being in antithesis of the other worldview. Now, let me play this clip.
Absolutely. The Christian worldview is a paradigm. It's a worldview. And all other worldviews, including atheism, is a paradigm. Okay? Most atheists all atheists hold to the not God paradigm. And within that paradigm, there's a sub-paradigm, usually of naturalism.
There's
Most
whole layers of sub paradigms, like a Russian nesting doll. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's a good illustration of the rusting nesting dolls. Okay. And so we have various overlapping paradigms that act as guardrails that produce whatever beliefs and interpretations. Okay. So
he's agreeing with you, but he changes the presentation of the dichotomy.
He's actually misrepresenting what I said. Okay. There is a superficial overlapping between what I said and he just said. It is true. You either believe or you don't believe, but that's not what I was talking about. Notice how I'm constantly trying to discuss.
So by listening to that, you would get the idea, or may get the idea, that there's some type of an overlapping between the God world and other worldviews. Now listen to this.
I don't agree.
Stop right there.
Our worldviews are in antithesis.
Okay.
There's no overlap here.
No, there is.
Okay. So you heard that. And now there is another similar set of statements that he's made, which I'm going to let you listen to right now. This is concerning common ground.
In dialogue with a person of another worldview.
Oh, well, we can have common ground, but there's not neutral ground. Okay? We have common ground because we're both made in the image of God. We both have foundational mental states that are ordained of God, and we live in the same world that God created us to move and breathe and talk and reason in. So in that sense, we have common ground. Every question that you asked affirmed what I just said.
So then we found some common ground and we should be better.
So you agreed with me.
To engage in dialogue with a person of another worldview.
Oh, well, we can have common ground, but there's not neutral ground. Okay? We have common ground because we're both made in the image of God. There can be common ground that we are creatures made by God.
So that was Darth 1.0 on common ground. Now let's listen to Darth 2.0.
Christianity using that which only Christianity affords. So
thank you, Alex.
You're saying I'm not going to let him have that first. If you want to make that argument, just answer the simple question.
There's not common ground. If he's going to attack the Bible, if he's going to say anything at all,
there isn't any common ground because we have two different worldviews because there's not a common ground. This is a myth that the skeptics have that there can be or should be common ground. It's a myth of neutrality. Now Floyd keeps on making.
Now there's one more thing I'd like to point out as far as Darth either modifying or changing his worldview, and it is not a comparison between, maybe what he said before or what he said later, but just a self-admission actually about his questions that he asks. He admits that even the questions that he asks are modified. Here's that clip.
I agree with you, but doesn't it show you the level of raw deception that these people will resort to in adult conversation or interaction on this issue?
Yep.
That we have to constantly refine our questions to deal with their prevarication. This is disgusting.
I was about to say that.
Okay, now I want to try to get a little more to where the rubber meets the road as far as these points where Darth will say one thing and then on another occasion will say something else. Sometimes the opposite. But the real problem, it's one thing to contradict yourself or be inconsistent, but it is a totally another thing if you make the claim that there are certain things that you cannot be wrong about, and not only can you not be wrong about it, but everybody knows it. So that's part of Darth's worldview. There are things, and I'm going to show you a list. Supposedly, everybody knows this. And as far as him not being wrong, now that's where that's where the rubber meets the road, because those who are in the God world, they're saying they have a justification. And sometimes he will give this example of either looking at an apple on the counter or the sky is blue, where he will say, for example, that there is a Christian and an atheist standing next to each other, and they're looking at the sky. And the Christian said, the sky looks blue today. And then the atheist said, yeah, the sky does look very blue. And then Darth will say, well, one of those two statements is incorrect. By virtue of the Christian has a justification, which is the Bible, and there is no justification on the part of the atheist. So that would be the difference. Okay, so here is a list of, well, it might not be comprehensive, but I'm hitting the main points. But these are things that Darth says he cannot be wrong about, and or everybody knows it. That would be including people who are in the God world and people who are not in the God world. For example, the first one, everybody, according to Darth, knows that there is one true God and creator. One true God, okay? The second one said there are other minds. Third, a physical, real world that is not illusory. Causality, continuity, regularity, uniformity of nature, laws of logic, basic cognition, reliability of basic reasoning. Now, some of these words he uses interchangeably. I want to play a couple clips that I put together where Darth is talking about these things that are foundational beliefs that, they are points that he cannot be wrong about according to his worldview.
So,
what faculties do you think we cannot be wrong about ever?
We cannot be wrong about that there is one true God and a creator and sustainer of all things. We cannot be wrong that he has created an externally, physically real world that is not illusory. We cannot be wrong that he has ordained that there is causality in this material realm. We cannot be wrong that he has created a world that operates in an orderly and regular way. We cannot be wrong that he has communicated with various individuals in human history, starting with Adam and reaching its ultimate culmination in the person and work of Jesus Christ. We cannot be wrong. We cannot be wrong that God has spoken through us through his Son, especially through Jesus Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. Okay? We cannot be wrong about that.
Okay, I understand.
The Bible, does God reveal that atheists can know about pizza?
God reveals from Genesis to Revelation that unbelievers can know certain things. For example, certain things about the physical world, that there's causality, that there's continuity, uniformity, regularity.
All right, now in this next clip, he was asked what is continuity, and so he's going to give more or less a definition of the word.
If you have no ultimate continuity, then you have no actual continuity.
Well, define continuity. What do you mean by continuity?
Continuity means that something or some things stay the same.
Nothing.
Well, then now you're screwed, because the guy says, he said, we don't know. For all we know, physics could operate different elsewhere. Okay? Now, when we talk about physics, that's just a fancy way of talking about continuity. Now.
So now the next question is, what if one does not claim that there is continuity? What will be the ramifications of that, or the consequences? In this next clip, you're going to hear Darth explain that. And remember, this is all tied into him saying that this is something that he cannot be wrong about.
Including the unity and diversity in existence. If you say that God is not needed, then the question is there actual continuity in existence amongst all of the diversity of particulars? Because without any continuity, right, without regularity and uniformity, you're not going to be able to make sense of things. So, either continuity exists, you will identify directly or indirectly that it exists, or you don't. Now, if you do not claim that there's continuity, then you have no basis for intelligibility, because your very capacity to speak is going to require the precondition of continuity.
Now, this one is where he blows it. I mean, he gives it up. That's why I was saying in the beginning of the video, he handed me his weapon. So here is a case where he's handing me his weapon. He talked about his worldview was a nuclear strength worldview and it could not be defeated. Well, here, by his own admission, he is defeating his worldview, because in one case he's saying he cannot be wrong. Listen to this next clip.
You believe induction can give you answers of
I
certainty.
said that physics is the same everywhere in the universe. Why is that not correct?
I didn't say that was not correct. I said you can't substantiate that.
So it is correct.
No.
And if it is correct, why should I substantiate it?
Yeah, if you're not saying
okay, you see what I'm dealing with here, Dex? I'm dealing here with adults who have the mind of teenagers.
Well, do you think that's a correct or incorrect statement? That
Okay, it is an unsubstantiated claim. that Sidney has made that physics is the same everywhere.
What do you think?
Well, what I think is that the Christian God exists, and He has revealed Himself, and He has revealed that He has made it. Okay. Well, I don't know that physics is the same everywhere in the universe. But what I
So what you just heard was, it was equivalent philosophically, metaphysically, and transcendentally. That would be the equivalent of surrendering your own worldview. The game is over, the war is over. That's it. So there he did not drop the bomb, he dropped the ball. Now, even though the war is actually over at that point, I guess maybe for, I could call it entertainment purposes, I'm going to let you listen to another one.
You see, I used to make a mistake. I used to want him to defend the uniformity of nature. Now I just say, what institutes and secures it?
Yeah, so how? How could that be? How can you make a mistake on something that you claim yourself that you cannot think otherwise about?
The Christian God has constructed our mind, not that we assume the uniformity of nature, but that we don't even question it. It is innate in the image of God that He has made us.
So there again, he's saying that his God has made us to know something that we could not think otherwise about. But then when you approach him and you corner him on that issue, when you breach that issue, he says, I don't know. And now I'm getting kind of close to the next phase of the video. And now for the next phase, I want to show how Darth has it seems as though he has misunderstood a few terms. I'm going to show you 3 clips. And as you listen to these clips, you're going to be able to hear what he's doing and how he's making error. Here are those 3 clips. And by the way, this is concerning axioms and properly basic beliefs.
God
is the real. What's an axiom? Can you help me? What's an axiom?
An axiom would be like a fundamental truth that you start with, that you could have further justifications for, that would be the grounds for other beliefs and truths.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. We first of all, we have properly basic beliefs, and then we have presuppositions that are added to properly basic beliefs. Properly basic beliefs are not something that we can further go back and defend.
Correct.
That can't.
So you heard him just now speaking about axioms, and he said that is something that you cannot go back any further on. And then you heard him say, he said the same thing about properly basic beliefs. You can't go back any further. So clearly, this demonstrates that he lacks a fundamental knowledge about some of these terms. Now, I want to go back again to the list that I showed, the things that he said that he cannot be wrong about. And notice that on the second one on the list, there are other minds. Okay, so I'm going to play a clip from, this is probably going back 7 or 8 years, and here's that clip.
Any further and offer argumentation for that pertain to our immediate experience, such as the past is real, such as the physical world around me is real, that when I'm talking to you at the coffee shop, that you possess another mind. Okay?
However, now listening to that, if you look at that whole conversation, and by the way, that video was well over 5 hours long. I think Darth was not in it the whole duration, but I'm sure he was in it probably well over 4 hours. So if you listen to the entire conversation, there's nowhere in that conversation where it sounds like Darth is deviating from what he just said. There's nothing to the contrary. There's nothing that would sound like he's being defensive about what he's saying. Now, less than 1 year later, he made another statement that related to the exact same thing about other minds. Listen to this.
In your view, and in my view, it's unjustified. In your view, there exists a justification for it because the God created it to be so. But as to the truth of the belief, I believe there is a world, a mind-independent reality. And Didi, you believe there is a mind-independent reality. So we actually agree as to the truth of that belief, as to where
I don't agree.
Stop right there.
Our worldviews are in antithesis. Okay. There's no overlap here.
No, there is. Okay. I'm going to state a belief.
Actually, there isn't.
You tell me if you agree. I'm going to state a belief. This is a belief I genuinely hold.
It doesn't matter if
I believe there's a mind-independent reality. Do you agree, yes or no? I believe there's a mind-independent reality. Do you agree, yes or no?
Is that true that you believe that?
I believe that there's a mind-independent reality. Do you share this belief?
Okay.
Hold on.
So what you just heard, the very same point that he earlier said, everyone knows. And he is speaking from his own worldview, and he is talking about the other worldview, saying that everyone in that other worldview also knows it. Now, when he is confronted later, he refuses to grant that. Now, this is just my take on that. And like I said in the beginning, I'm not trying to defend myself, or I don't feel that I need to say anything about my worldview. So let me put this in the form of a question. Doesn't it sound like he's trying to say basically, even though he may not admit it, truth is relative? That's what it sounds like that he could be saying. What do you think? Because he's saying on one hand that there is truth, but it cannot be attained in the other worldview, only from his worldview. So to me, doesn't it sound like that means truth is relative? Now, let me play another clip. Now, this one is pertaining to Romans chapter 1, verses 18 and 19, which I know Darth has said something to the effect, I'm just paraphrasing, but he said that this is one of the premier Bible verses that pre-suppers use, or that he uses, to get the idea across that there are those who are suppressing the truth, okay? He says that this particular verse shows that everyone knows the existence of the Christian God. Everyone knows that God exists, but some people are suppressing the truth. Now, I'm going to play a clip related to that very same verse. Here's the clip.
Okay, Romans 1 says they know God exists, but they suppress the truth and righteousness. How can one suppress the truth and unrighteousness and simultaneously be sincere?
Well, it's more of a subconscious thing, right? Like
Romans 1 says they're not sincere. They're in a state of rebellion.
Well, in a sense, it's like self-deception. They deceive themselves and into thinking, I don't really hate God, or et cetera. It's deception.
I think when you say sincere, I think what you mean is they're cordial.
I guess so. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, like I'm saying, they can be nice, right? Like, we can't get conversation with atheists and stuff like that, right? But I mean, I don't think necessarily like an atheist would walk up to Jesus and hug him if he found out Jesus existed. I think they would, they would hate him.
Okay, there are no sincere atheists. They don't exist.
Right. I mean, it seems
Oh, okay. Well, that to me, didn't that sound like a universal statement? He said they don't exist. Well, let's investigate that and see if we can find any alternate versions of Darth or any deviations from what he just said.
I make it a policy that I'm only going to debate with people who are sincere players, not people who are doing these Saturday Night Live performers. Okay, are you an atheist or an agnostic?
Well, I mean, in my experience, the only difference between those two things is just like the way people choose to refer to themselves. Most people who are quote unquote atheists are actually just agnostic. They don't think anyone's making
Okay, good. So you lack belief in God. Since you lack, he had to go.
Did you have anything else you want to say on that before we get the next person in?
No, I just a final statement. I think that his own flip-flopping, contradictory incoherence speaks for itself. This is what happens when you reject the revelation of the Christian God.
Sure.
And I would like, even though we didn't agree, I want to compliment you that I think that you made a very sincere attempt to be truthful and honest.
Scott is a regular, right? PG is a regular critic of mine. He's bashed me on a number of occasions. Yes, I have. I'm fine with him. And in fact, your bashing and criticism is not trolling. You're not looking to obstruct. You're looking to legitimately disagree. That's why I respect and like you, because even though sometimes you have been super hard on me, you're not trying to troll and obstruct. You're sincerely objecting. And this is what the atheist community's got to learn.
I don't mind.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm out. Yep, I'm out.
If sincere atheists want to come in, people who are not stalkers or trolls, and want to intelligently present their atheism, I welcome it because you're a nice guy. Okay, even though we debate all the time and stuff like that, you're not a troll. You're a fairly sincere person, right? When I ask you,
you guys don't mind if I invite multiple personality here, do you?
No, not at all. He's cool. He's fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
We disagree regularly, but he's not a troll.
He's a great guy.
Yeah,
I like
when he disagrees, he's very sincere in his disagreement. He's not a troll.
So with that, I think I'm ready to go into the second part of this video, but I think I did pretty well to show that this so-called nuclear strength worldview, or what he sometimes refers to as a foundational, or sometimes he says grounding. And when he's using those words, he's talking about his ultimate foundation or ultimate final reference point. So I found a very good clip, which I think I'm going to use right here, which will be a good one to transition into part 2 of this video. Okay, here that is.
Since you lack belief in God, there must be something else that exists that provides for your capacity to think and reason. Since you lack belief in God, what is it that ultimately exists that provides for your reason?
We all have base axioms that we all assume.
How do you know that? How do you know that we all start from unjustified axioms?
I never said they were unjustified. I said we all.
Okay,
have
that's what an axiom is.
Like,
Is
if you
an
want to
axiom
ask me,
justified?
how do I know I exist? I don't fucking know how I exist.
Is an axiom justified, sir? How do you know universally that everybody starts from axioms as opposed that are okay? Okay. Now, in the Christian worldview, we start. Okay, listen. Do you want to have a conversation, or you just want to talk over me like a punk?
Okay, so now we're going to revisit that word axiom, but we're going to bring in with that another word, which is, well, okay, the other word would be self-evident. Okay, so we're going to look at those two words. First of all, we're going to look at the word axiom. Now, what's interesting about this is that Darth himself, while he was being recorded, he actually Googled the word axiom. Let's see what he came up with.
Anything? Yeah, I Googled axiom, and this is the first one that comes up. A statement or a proposition that is regarded as being established, accepted, or self-evidently true.
Sorry to
Now,
interrupt.
and in another definition of axiom is a proposition that is assumed without proof. Okay? Now, another definition is an axiom is an unprovable rule. So
if you paid attention to that, you would hear that an axiom is defined as something that is self-evident, and vice versa. So if Darth were to actually, from that point on, if he were actually willing, or was actually willing to be consistent and to be accept the definition that he just read off to everyone else, if he was to accept that, there wouldn't be any problem with this. The argument would be over. But that's not the case, because what Darth does with that particular word, axiom, is a gross bastardization of the word. Using his words, he often uses that. Yeah, it's a grotesque bastardization of that word, because what he does is that he takes that word axiom and he does what I've referred to in other videos. He plays the up-down game. So he will take the word axiom and he will play that word down. He'll take the word self-evident and he'll play that word up. So it's basically taking a word which he ought to know better, because he himself Googled it. He ought to know better that it's the same idea. It's interchangeable. But of course, remember, who are we speaking about? Now, there was another occasion where, and I will leave the link in the description area, where Darth was with a group of, I guess maybe atheists and believers. And he Googled the word atheist. And as he was doing that, he read off each and every source. All right, he was reading it out loud. So I recorded that, or I saved it. And so I have the names of all of those sources that he used. There was probably 8 or 9 different sources that he quoted from, which were all online. So what I did, because, what's fair for the goose is fair for the gander. So I took the same sources that he used to quote or to find definitions of the word atheist, and I used those exact same sources to look up the word axiom and self-evident. And when I went there, it was a virtual match between the word axiom and self-evident, vice versa. They can be used interchangeably. And I will try, I hope I will have room in the description area of the video. I will paste all of that. If not, I will have a link going to my website to show that. Now, thirdly, and this is a jewel, because Darth has often quoted the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. So I decided to check that out to see what that would say about the word self-evident. Now, there were over 1,000 entries when I searched for the word. So I tried to find the best one. Obviously I couldn't spend all day doing that. So I probably went through, excuse me, I probably went through the first 30 or 40, and I found one which it pretty much laid out the definition, So here's what I found. Quote, "The first thing to note is that a self-evident proposition is not the same as an obvious truth. To begin with, obviousness is relative to certain individuals or groups. What is obvious to you may not be obvious to me, but self-evidence is not relative in this way. Although a proposition may be evident to one person but not to another, it could not be self-evident to one person but not to another. A proposition is just self-evident, not self-evident to someone. Secondly, there are many obvious truths that are not self-evident. Certain well-known empirical truths, for example, that if I drop a heavy object, it will fall, or that the world is bigger than a football, are obvious but not self-evident. There are also self-evident propositions that may not be obvious to everyone, at least prior to reflection. That if, for example, that if all A's are B's and no B's are C's, then no C's are A's. Or that one man can be the father and grandfather of the same child, unquote. So now what is particularly damning to Darth's worldview? In fact, it's pretty much contradictory. It's a 180 to everything that Darth has said about this idea of his worldview is an exclusive worldview where only from within that worldview can someone attain truth. And of course, that would include self-evident truths. Only from that worldview can someone discern the truth or have a grounding. So this right here shows that something is not self-evident by virtue of it being exclusive to either a particular group or a particular individual. That is not what self-evident is. And once you start talking in those terms, then you are no longer speaking about that word. It's a different word you're using. So this is what we see when we hear Darth. We hear him bringing in a lot of extra baggage that doesn't even show up there. I looked in Stanford at several entries. None of them showed anything about that something that is self-evident is exclusive only to a particular group, or to be more precise, to presuppositional apologists or fundamentalist Christians. There was nothing in there. Now, if someone wants to show me that, I'd be happy to take a look at it. So the original motivation which led me to do this video was based on the conversation that Darth had with Eli. And in that particular conversation, they were trying to claim exclusivity, but that is a lie. It is not found anywhere in the literature. According to Darth, by his own Google search of the word axiom, according to Darth, by the same sources that he has used to look up the word atheist, and according to Darth, because one of his favorite go-to sources is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Now, if anyone can find in there, and I know my critics might try to grab on this or might try to misrepresent what I said earlier, because I didn't say that I went to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy and it was not to be found anywhere. I didn't say that. The only way that I could know would be to read the entire encyclopedia. So that, I just want to be clear, that is not what I'm saying. Now, so now that I've got that out of the way, and now that we know the true meaning of the word self-evident, and we know the true meaning of the word axiom, now I can go ahead and go to part 3 of the video. And so part 3 of the video is going to bring this whole thing down to what maybe Darth would call the grounding of his worldview, or the ultimate foundation. Because in the video where Darth was speaking with Eli and others, they were talking about self-evident truths. But I want to go even a little more foundational than that, or a little more fundamental, because we really, in order to speak about self-evident truths, we also could go a little deeper than that and talk about what is truth. Now, I don't want to just quote anybody. I don't want to quote, Van Til or Bahnsen or someone else, because I want to go straight to the target. I'm not concerned about what other people think about their worldview. I'm not, for purposes of this video, remember I'm focusing on the worldview of one individual. So I found a clip where someone actually asked him, what is truth? And he defined it, or he gave the answer. Here that is.
What is truth in your worldview?
Truth is that which conforms to the mind of God.
Okay.
Okay, well, I love that. Okay, I am so glad he said that, because now what he's talking about now is his grounding, or his ultimate reference point, which would be God. Now he's talking about God. Good. So now I could just say, well, let's go a little deeper. What is God? Who or what is God? So what I did in this case is I went through, and this really is the main reason why it took me so long to do this video, because a large part of the time that I spent was going through quite a few documents and quite a few videos. I'm not going to say how much, but it was over 2 months worth of research. And I have a pretty big database. So anyway, I was able to put together, I think, enough. I feel I did my due diligence to put together some things that he has said about his biblical Christian fundamentalist God. Here are a few of those things. And all of this is referring to the Christian God, okay? God is a concrete object. God is ultimate. God is the singular ultimacy. God is non-contingent being. The existence of God is self-evident. And only God is absolute. Now, by the way, I put the links there, and what I'm going to try to do, if I have enough space, I will paste all of this into the description. But if not, I will put it on the website, which, by the way, I haven't finished yet. There's going to be a gap in time between the time I finish this video versus the website. I hope I can finish the website by the within the next maybe 4 or 5 days or 1 week. Hopefully no longer than 1 week. I don't think it'll take me that long, but I know myself, I'm bad at making estimates about time as far as trying to put a deadline. But anyway, here are some, I guess you could say, characteristics or properties of what he says is the Christian God. Okay, now, what we're going to look at next is, I should say, are the laws of logic, or logic, okay? Logic are, or the laws of logic are abstractions. Laws of logic are not ultimate. Laws of logic are not a single ultimacy. Laws of logic are contingent upon God. Laws of logic are not self-evident, and the laws of logic are absolute. So there are a few qualities or properties about the laws of logic and or logic. So now what I'm going to do now is play a couple clips where they were asking, different people were asking Darth specific questions about this fundamentalist God. Here are those clips.
A whole lot of
No. God is a concrete object.
No, it's not. I can't touch him.
Okay, all right. You're not understanding. Okay,
that's not what concrete means.
That's not.
And Darth has said this on many occasions. God is a concrete object. He is Christian God. And he has also made many remarks about the laws of logic. What are they, or what could they be? Let's listen.
Okay, so the laws of logic as abstractions about all entities are.
So there you heard Darth referring to the laws of logic, and he said that they are abstractions. Now, what I want to show you next is it's referred to in mathematics as the transitive property of equality or transitive law. And it says if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. Now, this is talking about math usually, but it could also apply to things with certain qualities. So you could see below that, if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. They're identical in as far as qualitatively. Now, if we go back to our charts and we put them together, comparison, we can see a few differences here. For example, God is a concrete object. The laws of logic are abstractions. God is ultimate. The laws of logic are not. God is a singular ultimacy. The laws of logic are not a singular ultimacy. God is a non-contingent being. The laws of logic are contingent upon God. The existence of God is self-evident. The laws of logic are not self-evident. Now, what's interesting, Darth says that only God is absolute, but the laws of logic are absolute. Now, listen to this.
So in the Christian worldview, God is that which is fundamental, absolute, ultimate, the creator, and God is concrete. He's not an abstraction of the mind. God.
Okay, so you heard him say that God is concrete. He is not an abstraction of the mind.
Yeah, when you read, in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. Although that seems like a simple verse, it's monumentally profound. It has many applications, but one thing that it does mean is that everything that exists that is not God is utterly and completely contingent upon God. That includes all reason and logic, everything.
So by looking at what he said in those various clips, and by the way, I could provide a ton more, but basically what it looks like to me is that he's saying that God is the ultimate. Everything else other than himself is a derivative and is contingent on himself. Everything else. So with that, here I'm going to be playing these will, I think, really be my final, maybe, well, I think I have 3 more clips. So these will be the second set. Now, these were on, the clips I'm going to show you were on 2 separate occasions, and they were asking Darth about logic. Specifically asking, what is logic or what is the laws of logic? And so let's take a look at how he replied.
God is the eternal mind. God is an eternal, incorporeal mind that is self-identical. And he cannot lie, and he cannot think or be what he is not. So God's mind is actually the laws of logic.
Darwin's, what is logic?
I would say that actual logic would be the mind of God.
So now that was a little different from what he said earlier. Because there he is saying that God is, well, two things. God is the laws of logic, and actual logic would be the mind of God. So we have a identity crisis. Because remember, Darth says A cannot be not A. Now, there's a couple more clips that I'd like to add to this, but basically I made my point, I think. At this point in time, I've shown what I set out to do. But there are two more little clips that I want to play here.
Like a yes or no question.
Christianity will win over the Jews and Muslims. Fuck the Muslims, brothers.
Yeah, work on the English accent, buddy.
Do you believe God it does have a mind?
No, God is a mind.
So you heard that. He asked Darth a yes or no question. He did have an accent, but he said, or he asked, I have a yes or no question. Do you believe that God has a mind? And Darth answered by saying, no, God is a mind. Okay, now let's listen to this clip.
See, you don't understand biblical.
Did I say?
You don't understand biblical theology. The God of the Bible is defined as constructing the mind of man, the basic operational functioning of the mind of man. Correct?
Oh, I'm not great on theology.
Okay, well, that's what the Bible. This is a totally uncontroversial point. It's called being made in the image of God.
Well, I know there's a huge debate over what that actually means.
Okay. Well, actually not when you read the Bible. You see God's mind. Okay, for example, we have a mind, a will, and emotions. The Bible teaches that God has a mind, a will, and emotions.
So there he said, God has a mind. So we've got a few issues here with the identity of this particular God. Number one, he says God is a concrete one. Then he says the laws of logic or logic are an abstraction, but God is not logic, and logic and also the laws of logic are the mind of God. When he was asked, does God have a mind? He said no. And then later, or in a different occasion, he said God has a mind. So this is an identity problem, major. And now what I did, I'm almost ready to wrap this up, but I contacted FloydFP because he has also helped me in the past. And I asked him, because I wanted a second opinion. So we did have an email exchange, and I want to read the email that he sent to me, part of it. He couldn't reply to all of it, but I'm going to include the part that he did want to reply to, part of that. He replied, he said, thanks for the email. I don't think I will be able to comment on all of your points here, but I will on the things that really stand out to me. As far as self-evident truths, I think there's much of anything that we can declare as self-evident, except for perhaps analytic a priori truths like all bachelors are unmarried men and all triangles have three angles totaling 180 degrees. I think both people make the point that they are just propositions that both sides agree on without having to spend the time to prove them. Axioms in logic are used pragmatically as starting points from which one derives conclusions. They are simply accepted for the purpose of a formal proof and nothing more. Axioms in logic haven't, for some centuries, been considered as indubitable, incorrigible, irreversible, self-evident, undeniable, etc. That is a quaint old Aristotelian notion. God is an eternal, he's quoting me. about what I said. God is an eternal incorporate mind that is self-identical, and he cannot lie, and he cannot think or be what he is not. So God's mind is actually the laws of logic. So there he's quoting part of my email, but I was quoting part of what Darth said in one of the clips. So he answered, he said, that would be an example or a representation of the laws of logic and not the laws of logic itself. Are not all minds and all entities self-identical with itself? That is simply how the law of identity can be applied to all identities. Now he's going over what I said, the transitive law. A, God is a mind. B, the mind of God equals the laws of logic. C, God is the laws of logic. He's putting in a little different form here because he offers an alternative. From these premises, you could also derive God is a mind. B, the mind of God equals the laws of logic. C, the laws of logic are a mind. But the laws of logic are abstract and causally inert, where God is a concrete object that supposedly caused all contingent reality. So I think it is just a category error to say God is logic. I think what they are trying to do is just import their theological commitments in the discussion in reference to John 1. Now that was the end of the first exchange I had with them, but then I went to the second one. So I replied back to him. I said, okay, Floyd, thanks very much for the reply. One question. So would it be fair to say that since Darth says, according to his worldview, his God is a concrete object, then I gave the link, and he also says that the laws of logic and logic are abstractions, I gave that link, then it would be a contradiction, even according to his worldview, to claim that his God is the laws of logic. So he replied back, he said, yes, I think it would be a contradiction to say something concrete, God, is identical to an abstraction, the laws of logic. Presuppositionalists like Darth will also make claims like Jesus is the truth, appealing to John 14:6. And Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. It is a category error. Presuppositions are truth bearers, not concrete objects. Imagine if I hold a coffee cup and I utter, this coffee cup is true. The proposition, this is a coffee cup, would be true, but the coffee cup itself is not true. Truth is a relationship between a belief or a statement or a proposition and some fact or state of affairs. It's a relationship between the agent's belief and the actual reality the belief is trying to represent, and not the fact or state of affairs itself. And then I said, so I consider this a wrap. I will plan to post my video possibly today, but if not, within the next 1 or 2 days. And I'll definitely put in a kudo for you and also refer your YouTube channel link and this email. Thanks again. Your point of view is priceless. Sincerely, DDD. So that was the end of the email exchange that I had with Darth. He did send me a short email after that, but that was after, that was pretty much after I already had, or after he had already answered all of the points that I was asking him about, or at least the relevant points. So this is pretty much a wrap on this video. I hope you enjoyed the video. Now, one more thing, I had to pick out an ending. How would I end this video? And while I was doing my research, I found what I thought was really the perfect ending. And so I'm going to play that now. Please leave any comments that you have or questions. Please leave them in the comments area. I will be posting this video today. And, again, thank you for watching. And I hope to hear from you. So with that, take care.
Is there an ultimate reference point for each and every particular in existence?
Well, so I gave you the answer of reality. You're saying that's abstract, right?
Okay, so
This is
okay,
the part of his troll, man. He's so annoying.
I know this, but I just want to demonstrate methodically to everybody in the room what a liar he is. Okay, and I'm just exposing his incompetence.
Expose my balls.
Do each and every one of the particulars have an ultimate reference point?
Yeah, I gave you the answer. Yeah.
Okay. But now you've contradicted yourself. Because if each particular has an ultimate reference point, then you cannot simultaneously say that there are some particulars that are self-contained. You have contradicted yourself metaphysically. Do you understand? Do you understand? Okay, listen. If a particular is absolute self-contained within itself, then it's incoherent to say that it has a reference point from which it derives and depends for its actuality and intelligibility. I will tell you again, you have metaphysically contradicted yourself.
So
I've got you cornered.
Yeah, so maybe I'm missing
This is
check.
Listen, no, you listen to me. This isn't check. It's checkmate.
Here she comes, right at us. Watch them come together. There it is. Look out. Wow, some smash.
From a biblical, I'm only going to give you the biblical perspective.
I want your perspective. I don't.
I'm
really
giving you my perspective is the biblical perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, because the message of Christianity, as it is spoken by me, the denial of which leads to incoherence. Or God belief. And by the way, I'm sure you're aware that I only defend Christian theism. Listen to me carefully. The reason why I have to be so assertive is because I have this teenage mentality. Listen carefully.